Okay, so this video is about quorum sensing, which is basically how bacterial cells can communicate, um, but they'll be communicating in order to regulate their gene expression. And it's based on population density. So, in my professional opinion, I feel like this topic ties into AP Biology Unit 4, cell communication, using local regulators, as well as Unit 6 with regulating gene expression, as well as Unit 8 and population density. So let's go ahead and learn what quorum sensing is. So here, if we had a single, well, first off, we had a single bacteria, it might send out a signal, like a pheromone of some kind, like a chemical, into the environment. And basically, before I go further, I was curious, like, where does the word, I know I've heard the word quorum before, so I actually Googled it. And in general, the word quorum means the minimum number of members, this is from Google, of an assembly or society that must be present at any of its meetings to make the proceedings of that meeting valid. So you need a minimum number of people at a meeting to say, yes, our conversations, our conclusions are valid. So kind of the same thing here with bacteria is there's actually a certain population density that needs to be reached in order for the cells to simultaneously turn on gene expression. So we can use the analogy. Let's pretend you're blindfolded in a classroom or a room or classroom, and you throw a ping pong ball. If that ping pong ball hits you back, is it likely that that ping pong ball, like you threw it and it did like a boomerang and came back? Or is there someone else in the room also throwing ping pong balls, right? So as bacteria send out these chemical signals into their environment, if they receive any back, that's how they sense population density. Because remember, bacteria don't have eyes, they don't have ears, they can't communicate in the same way that animals communicate, or even plants. Well, plants will use chemicals as well, but how we all communicate. So, if you have multiple bacteria sending out signals, and these, imagine they're like ligands, right, from our cell communication chapter. So you have these chemicals going out into the environment. If the receptor on a bacteria receives one, it could have been its own it sent out. And that would actually be called autocrine signaling, like its own message attaches to its own receptor. It is possible, but the more bacteria you have in a population, the greater the likelihood that those signals you're receiving are coming from other bacteria. So once a certain threshold of signals have been reached, the cells will simultaneously turn on gene expression to produce protein products for whatever the situation is, because they're going to have a greater impact in that large population density. So this I also just Googled in case someone needed words to understand. So it says, in biology, quorum sensing is the ability to detect and to respond to cell population density by gene regulation. As one example, quorum sensing enables bacteria to resist the expression of specific genes to the high cell densities at which the resulting phenotypes will be most beneficial. So here on the left, you can see there's a low population density, and on the right, you can see a higher population density, and you can see the difference in those signaling molecules. Now, here I like this picture as well because you can see producing the signal, but also receiving it with the receptor. Like a high population density, you're going to have more signals in the environment, and that's how they sense that there is a high population density around them. So with quorum sensing, let's look at some examples. So maybe you have a like a virulent bacteria. Maybe it's a species that causes infections, for example. So when it has first here growth and establish, like maybe it's strep throat, let's pretend, or something. And so the bacteria, you get like one or two, you catch it somewhere, you kiss someone, share a soda, I don't know. And So there's a few there, and they begin to like multiply by binary fission. And they send out these chemicals or pheromones. And then as their population density starts to increase and they reach a particular threshold of density, they simultaneously will turn on specific gene expression to produce whatever that like pathogen is, or however they work together to cause harm and attack. So I should also mention here, you see in the top right the word biofilm, and a biofilm is when you like don't brush your teeth. Like let's say you fall asleep and you don't remember to brush your teeth, and then the next morning you wake up and you run your tongue over the top of your teeth, and there's like that slimy feeling. Well, that's a biofilm. The bacteria that grow on your teeth are actually, once they reach a certain population density, because when you brush your teeth, you're basically brushing the bacteria off your teeth is the purpose. But when you forget, their population density increases. And as their population density increases, they use quorum sensing to communicate, and they'll actually turn on gene production to produce this like sticky gel-like capsule that surrounds them, and that's that film you feel across your teeth. So when you go to eat again, the sugar in your food or drink is what sticks now to your teeth, and the bacteria have a source of food to feed from. So when you brush your teeth, some toothpastes, they work by changing the pH of your mouth a little bit. So not only are you physically brushing off the bacteria, but trying to like change their environment, make it harder for them to survive. Okay, but that would be a biofilm and a population of bacteria using quorum sensing to produce it. So here, anyway, I just like this when we talk about collective behaviors of bacteria. Now, sometimes for conjugation, which we discussed in a video on prokaryotes, video 6.7, prokaryotes and genetic variation, it's in that video. So to know that another bacterium is even nearby for conjugation, you could use quorum sensing. For biofilm formation, which is we just talked about, like that film that forms on the top of your teeth, or if you let's say you cook noodles or something and you set the pot in the sink and then you fill it with water and you like forget to do dishes that night, or you just choose not to. The next morning there's like a layer of film across the surface of the water. That's a biofilm. It's a bunch of bacteria. Or bioluminescence are some organisms that will glow based on the production of proteins by bacteria. But what would be the good of one single bacterium glowing? Rather, turning on that gene expression in a large group would actually produce that glowing phenotype, or even antibiotic production. Now, we always think of antibiotics as something humans invented in order to keep us healthy. But in reality, our antibiotics come from nature. And some bacteria, like they can produce antibiotics to kill competing bacteria. So they will actually send out chemicals into their environment that will kill a different species of bacteria. But they'll do that when they themselves are in a high population density and can actually have like a greater effect on that competing bacteria population that's nearby. So there are collective behaviors that will benefit from quorum sensing in bacteria. All right, so this is my last slide, and one interesting thing is as Staphylococcus aureus, this bacteria that causes staph infections, becomes increasingly resistant to antibiotics. I read a study years ago that they're working on blocking the receptors that the staph bacteria uses during quorum sensing, so they can't communicate to cause virulence. And so I thought that was kind of cool, like a new avenue of treating bacterial infections, just stop their communication. So anyway, this is quorum sensing, and I think it ties into quite a different units. Now also, let's talk about these signals real fast to tie it into hormones a little bit more. These are not traveling in the bloodstream. They're not endocrine like hormones. I called them pheromones, which are chemicals that leave the body, but also in bacteria, they live very close near each other, next to each other, whatever. So they're like local regulators. They travel a very short distance. Okay, good job.